Tango 1 at the top, we are at Pop-Up Vehicle. 10-4, Tango 1, you have control. Tango 1 copy. Stand by. Stand by.
Integrity, passion, resilience. That's what this place was built on. That's what our community is founded on. Don't act like the example, just be the example. This is the home of the greatest fitness community in the world. We're trying to create strong, able bodies, resilient to injury with a gas tank to get shit done. If there's one thing from this podcast, it's about taking immediate action, find the problem, fix the problem. This is your opportunity. It's either a hell yes or a fuck no. It's that simple. You're ruining the Tango 1 podcast. Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
So welcome to Tango 1 podcast, everybody. Excited about my episode today with my new friends, Zach and AJ from Seattle. Zach Fowler, AJ Cara from Seattle, the 206 South and Old Country Strong. All these things we're going to talk about today. They will explain more. Great facility, great spots that these guys have out there. And I'm super excited to learn more about it because I really don't know much about it. So welcome to the show, guys, and appreciate you getting on here early in the morning for me.
No, man, thank you for having us. I know we talked about getting on. So when you sent me that notice yesterday, I was like, let's get it. Let's go. Always down to chat it up with our friends.
Yeah, we got the last minute request and you guys came through. So we met just 2 weeks ago. I knew of you guys kind of from online, from the Conjugate Tactical. We're all coaches together, but never really met. We hooked up at in Vegas, a little meetup that we're not allowed to talk about. And then, and we just kind of like hit it off and have fun. Don't worry, Gus was on last week. We mentioned this as well. Just a bunch of us hanging out and shooting the shit and having some ideas. But I loved what you guys are doing. And it was just curious more about it. So tell me about 206 South. Start.
Well, so
don't get all professional. You're so professional now. 2 minutes ago, you were not.
Oh, no. It's more like,
all right, there we go.
It's more like,
he's really bad at dates. So
yeah,
he's
exactly.
trying to remember how long he's been doing this.
Well, no, for a broad scope of what 206 currently is, we are a nonprofit organization up in Seattle.
Down in Seattle.
Sorry. We're on the, oh yeah, he's up in Canada. I always forget where the arrows go on all that stuff. But we're in the south end of Seattle. We run a nonprofit that is very centralized with the focus of helping teens and getting fitness in all kind of different areas as far as lifting, boxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and stuff like that available at costs that people in the area can actually get. So for adults as well. So a lot of people, when they hear about 206 or they kind of look us up, they see the kids and think that's a central portion of it. And that's a central portion of like what we do, but it's not necessarily a central portion of our gym and our community. Our community itself is like 14 years old. That's when I opened up my first gym. So I have people that have been training with me for 14 years and they can't understand what happened for me to start coaching kids. They're like, so you're a mentor now. We remember you when you were just a dirtbag, like running a 20-some-year-old running the gym.
So 14 years ago, Zach was what, you were 24?
Yeah, I think I was 24. When
just turned 25, like the first summer that he was running this gym. And so we call them the six gymmers have really seen the evolution of Zach from 24 to 38 has been quite a transformation.
Yeah.
How did you become involved, AJ?
So back in the day when Zach was an unruly 20-something, he had it was so long ago that people read blogs.
Yeah.
So my coach and my mom's coach had found Zach through the great World Wide Web up in Canada. We do have that there. So I kind of knew of him peripherally. He was programming for my coach, Dave. He hosted a fundraiser workout called Pipe Hitters every year. An event.
Yeah.
An event. So a bunch of Canadians used to kind of make the pilgrimage down in August and compete. And we would just, I just got absolutely shellacked by the girls at Zach's gym. And in the car on the way home, we talk about like, oh, how cool would it be to do like a cycle, so a 6-week block of training with Zach's people and just, see how they train, get strong, like learn about what they're doing down there, because it's a CrossFit affiliate and they're all competing in CrossFit, but they're also all competing in kettlebell and they're all super freaking strong. And how is he doing this? Because really the only programming influences in BC, at least, that were going on in like 2010 through 2013 in Canada was like OPT and .com was pretty much like the biggest programming influences we were seeing. So we were just like really intrigued by it. And then a couple years later, I was done my undergrad, wanted to do my master's degree, but wasn't really sure, like wasn't really feeling I was looking at like a doctorate in psychology track. And my supervisor was like, why don't you take a year off? You don't really seem like wholeheartedly into it.
Let's take a gap year.
Took a gap year 8 years ago. Yeah, never went back. Sorry, Allison. So Zach posted for the first time, like, hey, we're looking for interns outside our immediate gym community to come in and learn to coach. And I emailed so overeager. Like Zach loves to do the impression of me as a 21-year-old, just like, hi, I want to learn. It was pretty dorky. But I was like, hey, yeah, I want to, I'm pretty sure I attached like a resume and a cover letter to like my first interaction with him.
Everybody did.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. That's
you weren't alone in that.
And I was like, I want to do your internship. And he was like, oh, do you mean the satellite internship? We'll talk about a little bit about like Old Country Strong and stuff, but he's like, oh, you mean the like abroad one? Because you clearly don't live in Seattle. And I was like, no, I mean, I'm going to pack up my Toyota Corolla full of stuff and come move there and learn from you guys. And he was like, oh, okay, well, I guess you should come to an interview. So I did a Skype interview and then I came down for like 48 hours, scariest interview of my life, because I stayed with Zach. And so it was just like full on.
It's a 48-hour interview, literally.
Yeah. Wake up at 5, go teach a 6 a.m. class, taught all day, train together, like very, very intimidating.
She didn't drink coffee at the time either. And I didn't.
Yeah, it's hard to trust people that don't drink coffee.
Well, no, that was the thing. She didn't tell me.
Oh, I didn't
So
say
I was
shit.
like,
Just do what he's doing.
Force feeding. And at that time we had like even a lot of classes that we were teaching. And I just taught all the classes because like low key.
Because you have control issues.
Yeah, like control issues. And then like we realized at a certain point, I was like Seattle's most successful personal trainer because I pretty much just
he was personal training his 200 gym members.
Yeah. So, but I would do all that. And I just was like, she was like 5 a.m. I'm like, here's a cup of coffee. And then 7 a.m. I'm like, here's a cup of coffee. And then like, before we're going to train, I'm like, here's a cup of coffee. And she was just fucking wired because
like shaking.
Yeah, I didn't know she didn't like black coffee. So, and it was like real strong coffee too. But yeah, so she applied for the open-ended internship, came down, she crushed it. We invited her to come down and, do an internship. She left. We were like, man, we should get her back. She came back.
Meanwhile, there was the year that Fast and Furious song when Paul Walker died. It was the year that came out. And I just remember driving back home to Canada and it would be on the radio like every hour. And I was just like crying, like, it's been a long day.
She was like crying. This is like when she was leaving. It was like as she was leaving, she's like, I want to go back.
But I couldn't stay in the States any longer. So I had to we did a lot of visa applications to get me down here. But it all worked out.
Dude, yeah, we'll let you go back to asking questions. The story of how we get anywhere is it's just the gym itself is 14 years, and I was doing stuff before then. And that doesn't even include like seminars or like private work or anything like that. So there's like, it's just every time we go on like a podcast, I'm always like, we got to stay on point because you want to hear a life story, you want to hear what, we want to fill out some questions, and I was like, I don't know. Just tell them like guide wherever you want us to go. I'll talk my ear off.
And
that's the idea of the podcast, right? We just want it's all about the stories, man. People love the story of how people came to be, and you guys are killing it. So keep going, man.
Yeah. He had 2 careers before opening a gym at 24, which I just think is crazy.
I too took a gap year from high school and college, and my mom's like, you fucking DJ. You need to go to college. And then I did. I went to Bellevue Community College for Fire Science.
Go Bulldogs.
Go Bulldogs, which is now a 4-year university. So I tell my brother all the time, he went to law school. I was like, yeah, you went to law school, but I got my 4-year degree in 2 years. He's like, that's not what happened. I was like, I went to Bellevue College. He's like, you went to the community college. I'm like,
but it's a real
college now. I was like, sorry. So fucking crushed it on that. Yeah. So I got done with high school, I was very much like into athletics and stuff like that. I was a big time grappler and things, but my 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 tendency to be a bit of a wild child kind of overshadowed my my abilities to stay focused in some areas. So
This is why we get along so well.
yeah, exactly,
The
exactly.
three brothers with ADHD, but Zach wasn't the one that got diagnosed in high school.
Yeah. So we do like a big fundraiser for 206 every year, which is called like our winter gala. And the first one we had, my sister-in-law came up to, was it you and Jesse?
Yeah.
Yeah, my sister-in-law comes up to like, I was in like in a suit and stuff to like, this is really cool. I never thought I'd see Zach doing this. She's like, Zach was rough. Like Zach was really rough. Like I'm like, all right, I remember crashing on your couch that summer, and you know, you had a kegerator at your house. So I mean, no, I got my shit together. And so I was going to school, and then I started living at a fire department. The chief of the fire department, his son was actually one of my best good buds. And he was working construction, and I was good with my hands. And he was like, hey, we should, you know, come out, start framing with me. So we were framing, and then I don't remember who it was. Oh, it was this guy that kind of helped us get going on our construction stuff. He was like, this is what they're charging for you guys to do the work. All right. And this is what they're paying you. And I was like, holy shit, they're charging like $60 an hour for us, and we're getting like 15. And I was like, this is ridiculous. We should do this on our own. So we started a contracting business. I want to say I was 21, 22. So we were doing that. And I was living at the fire department and shit like that. And along the way, I kind of found that I was helping some folks get ready for physicals and things like that. And I just really liked it. So I started going the training route and kind of dropped multiple careers that most people banked that I was going to go into. And I went full into like training and trying to open a gym. And a lot of my friends, especially the ones that were career firefighters, they were like, yeah, we thought that was going to fail. I was like, fuck you, dude. I'm like, good friend you were. That's why I don't see you around
Yeah,
anymore.
15 years later, they were like, yeah, that we thought that was never gonna
Yeah, that's the first responder world, though, man. That's how
exactly.
they always think.
Exactly.
They always
Like,
think
that's not
it's
gonna
the only place, the only way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, you know how it works is if you guys come. They're like, what's the discount? I'm like, fucker.
Yeah.
You know, I'm living out of my car pretty much.
Yeah.
Which I lived out of everything. Lived in my gym at one point. I was the expert at signing like the 3-month lease. I'd like drive around with my dogs because I have like 2 mixed breeds, aka pit bulls. Or I had 2 at the time. One of them passed recently. But I drive around with them in the car looking for like a same day like lease sign up. And I'd be like, so I got these dogs, and I have a vet thing that says mixed breed. They're not technically against the rules. They're in the car. You want to meet them.
You want to meet them. And that was the key, because they're the best dogs.
Yeah.
And so people would meet them and be like, oh, of course.
Yeah. So I floated around quite a bit before I helped somebody open up the first gym I opened. I was actually opening up for a couple guys. I'll call them investors. They were kind of present, but for the most part, like they just gave me a space. I put the floor down. I built the community. I built the culture. One of the guys had a brother that had a CrossFit, and I was doing CrossFit at the time, but our CrossFit flavor was so different that it actually kind of caused some static between me and the investors, because they were looking for something more traditional. And you know, as we were talking about like blog
Yeah,
rolling,
let's dive into that a little bit. Like one, so you guys know the rest of the world, or at least in my end of the world, we picture everybody in Seattle living in their car with 2 dogs. Like that's that's how like the news. That's how the news portrays it. But you know,
it's getting warmer out, so everybody all the locals are really moving around. So
well, yeah, let's talk about that non-traditional part of CrossFit and like get into like maybe like the RX stuff, because like I mean, you hit your account like when you guys said that at the thing, like I was never really into CrossFit.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's like not even like a knock on it. It's just not my thing. I did the .com stuff when it first came out, like the rest of the SWAT team did. And that's kind of what got me into Jim Jones and kind of took me on the whole different path. But the, 60,000 followers, from what I hear, you guys were a pretty big deal in that CrossFit community. So like, I'd like to get into that too, just a little bit. So you opened the gym, it caused a little bit of rift because you were just more traditional in the barbell lifts, like coming back from that, like we're in the same age area, let's say. I'm 44, you're 38.
Yeah.
So we grew up in that kind of like bro era too, of like all my strength came from lifting in normal machines. And then I moved into the barbell, probably because of CrossFit, really. I just didn't love the Olympic part of it.
Well, and so we're pretty freaking close in age, and same thing with Gus. But we're there was a time that we all are involved with where CrossFit, Jim Jones, all that stuff kind of started circulating, blowing up at one time. So it was a real cool time to be in the fitness industry, because when I was training prior to finding that stuff, I was doing more of a traditional split kind of thing, but I was still pushing into intensity because I'd been such a wrestler, that like my conditioning workouts, I hated fucking running. So I was always doing something different because I was like, I could get mat time to get it going. So when I started really like diving into outside of I just hated normal training. So I actually found Westside way back in the day. And it was just so confusing, especially at my age. And like, I didn't have any equipment. And some of the guys I went and met, like they were outfitted with chains and shit like that.
You didn't wear the suit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm
like, I can't even buy a Dynamax wall ball. I'm not out here with like chains that I'm on the lift.
Well, yeah, because like my first med ball was like most people was like a sandbag that was like, or not a sandbag, a fucking
Basketball. Me too.
And,
Me too.
Yeah, and then you throw it up to catch it, and it's 80 fucking pounds and just shoots through your hands. That's a mistake. But so I found Westside, and I was playing with the model, and then I kept some of I would say it was more of the element of changing lifts and keeping accessory style stuff in my training was one of the things I took into it. And then I found CrossFit like randomly, because like you're saying, like the community, LEO and Fire and things like that, it was kind of like really blowing up at the time. So somebody was talking about it. I looked up .com, didn't make any sense when I found it at first. I was like, this is all you do is like 5 push jerks for 5 sets, and that's it. Doesn't seem like much of a workout. So like from the beginning, I was big into having multiple components in a session versus like the traditional kind of CrossFit split of just like the one thing based off intensity, which I am still a big fan of intensity, but you need to understand how to actually apply it for stimulus. But so found that, got into CrossFit. I was probably I'm in the community, and I taught all over the world. And like I said, with kettlebells, we're kind of like the redheaded stepchildren of the fitness industry. Everybody thinks they're cool, but they don't want to like buy them gifts at Christmas. And if you need like fence built or like manual labor, you'll call them. And that's kind of what people think about like kettlebells. It's like, oh, you can flip them. And then, I'll do a shitty snatch for a video, and, a bunch of people like it, or I'll put it on my logo and never use the kettlebell. So even like when I was teaching kettlebells for CrossFit, it was always like trying to get people to a different thought process of how to apply things.
And fun fact, Zach never got a negative review on a CrossFit kettlebell course.
I did not.
In fact, do they give a lot of negative reviews on CrossFit courses?
Yeah, actually,
I feel like maybe they do.
We would
the CrossFit people get like very protective very fast, I find.
No. So like when I would teach, actually we're jumping ahead. People are like, what are you talking about teaching courses? So yeah, I had to stay with that. I had a different thought process. I started getting into some Jim Jones stuff. And I really was like doing the Bruce Lee, take what works, get rid of the rest, and kind of creating my own style. So there was a big rift because the Seattle community is one of the oldest CrossFit communities out there. So it originally started in Santa Cruz with Glassman. And then the first affiliate actually was in Seattle. And it was actually originally called CrossFit North. And I think there was like a plan to maybe have like 4 affiliates around. So I started 14 years ago, but there was like 2 or 3 years of gyms opening up prior to that. So there's a very deep well of like coaches and people that have run through it and things along those lines. So people that would come from other gyms to check my gym out, they'd be like, what is this? Like, you're not doing the traditional stuff. Like, bro, what's the watt? I'm like, we don't really say that here per se. They're like, this is a sweet box. I'm like, yeah, we don't really say that either. Like, so we've always been counterculture to almost a bad point. But 14 years later, it's really sticking, like people really like it. They like to be on.
So you guys are not a CrossFit affiliate?
Yeah, we were not anymore. We're not anymore.
You were at one point.
We were even for a long time. And even when we had it, we didn't have it on the building for a long time. Like we ran a big performance facility called Northwest Strength Performance. People would be like, is this an affiliate? I'm like, yeah, well, technically, because a big part of it, I was like, hey man, I pay my taxes, like if I'm going to do this, I was big into like, hey, if you're going to, tap into this material base, then you should be paying back into the bigger institute, especially because I was like working for them at that time and things like that as a contractor. it just made more sense to support something as it was, in its infancy, and then it really just blew up and people started going crazy with it. But we always had our own style, very heavily kettlebell influenced. Things really, really changed at our gym. 12 years ago, I went to Russia with Jeff Martone, which we'll get back to in a second, for a week-long kettlebell sport coach clinic. And it just blew my mind on what they were implementing as far as styles into their training, what their cross training looked like, their breathing cadences and things along those lines. And I brought that back and I was like, this works. There's data, and I'm big on data. I was like, so we're going to re-implement it in a CrossFit. And it, between our use of different odd objects, my original kind of endeavor of understanding how important accessory work was and kind of changing up the lifts and things along that, we applied it to CrossFit, the sport, because that was like a thing that we were like competing in, but we did it with our own style. So we kind of, in the beginning, we were like Bad News Bears, like we would go to competitions and things like that. And we were very much out there to prove our style worked in a setting where you didn't have to do the traditional thing. And that just led into working in, LEO, fire, military, things along those lines. Okay, we'll circle back to like Jeff and the like all the seminar stuff in the beginning. The big thing, because we are instructors that coach coaches, and like as AJ was saying, like I coach her coach. I'm sure you have it because you have a bunch of gyms. Like, you start becoming a grand coach. You start being coaches that you coach, and then they start coaching coaches. Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay, man, I have a lineage now that kind of is behind me. The coolest thing that I think I got from the CrossFit community into work we do nowadays, especially it's because our gym's full conjugate model. A lot of the work we do, even with our teams, is based off that. But the cool thing that we learned is if you look at the CrossFit community as a whole, let's go with the bad of it. There's a lot of good coaches out there. There's a lot of good coaches. I have friends that are like fantastic coaches in it. Like some of the best coaches in the world, really. I've been lucky to kind of get to know them. But you have an entire community demographic that is literally trying to redline and fuck themselves up. Like, and when I mean fuck themselves up, I'm not trying to hurt themselves, but they just want to thrash themselves. They want to get after it, and I want to lay on the ground and do stuff.
Check their Apple Watch after, see how many calories.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're looking at a car that's redlining and just rattling really, really hard. And it's like, okay, what can I do as a coach to implement performance pieces into this to start bringing the rattling down so they can actually maintain what they're doing, and not just solely pacing and not just solely doing things like that. But it's like, how can I trick an entire demographic into like properly training themselves? And then if you take that and then you look into like, LEO, fire, anything along those lines, you're talking about the same thing that can be happening in a response to a body to stress, and how I can take what we're doing based off this large pool of people we got to work with, and how we can then reapply that into a better real world setting for the people that we're working with. So there's a lot of cool stuff that comes from working with this large group of people that really are just like, I'm just trying to thrash myself. And some of them start gearing towards, I want to perform better per se in certain things. So they go seeking, how to get better in those kind of things. But a lot of them aren't, or they don't know to seek it. So it's like, how do you layer it in, or even how do you layer it into these coaches that you work with so that they can then turn around and fix their communities and work with their athletes?
Right. That is one of the biggest battles we find here is that still the person that wants to thrash themselves, that now the watches have added a whole different dynamic to the system. And I think a lot of coaching and running any gym is actually like, it's more about like you say, like tricking or adult learning. Like, how can you get people to buy in on this? Or how can I, like, honestly, like on a Wednesday around here, as we call it, that's like our recovery day, where we follow the conjugate system too. We just have a little bit, the layout of the week is a little bit different, but follows the same premise. But we have to layer in, we don't call it recovery anymore, ever.
No,
we call it recovery. Nobody shows, right? We call it, conditioning or body armor or, reloading. Everybody's here. Sounds cool. And like recovery doesn't really have to be easy. Like if people have this be like the higher you raise your fitness level, the harder that recovery would seem. I'm sure your recovery would crush some people if they just walked into the gym. Right. So that's the kind of like with us, it's a constant battle with keeping the people bought in and keeping them moving forward on that thing. And with you said with CrossFit, I really agree. Like, we just had it was a cool thing happen here. We had somebody with the conjugate system, all their training, their basis of training was all with us. So the conjugate went to a CrossFit gym, learned the skill behind, double unders and some of the things I could never teach, and did amazing in the open. Right. And it's like the basis of strength takes so long to build. And I think that's what a lot of CrossFitters don't really appreciate. That, yeah, I do believe that fittest people in the world are those guys and girls competing in the CrossFit games. Like, that is unbelievable. But I don't think people truly appreciate how much time goes into building the skill, the practice, the strength behind those major, because what were they lifting last time? Those sandbags were like, 500 pounds or something. Like, it's like such a basis of training. It's not done in a 40-minute WOD.
Yeah.
Done over like months and years of building all those different pillars of fitness.
Well, and the part of that too, and it's true for any gym, like an Orange Theory or anything like that. There's that novice period. If you're introducing something new, you're going to get fitter, or you're going to get stronger. And the novice window is a beautiful thing, but once that novice window is done, I'm like, hey, you're not seeing 50-pound PRs anymore, dude. You're not, you just learned to lift.
And the depressing thing is you'll probably never see another 50-pound PR in your life.
And the same with weight loss.
Excited about 5 and 10-pound PRs.
Oh yeah, weight loss.
We just finished. We've run these 6-week transformations. It's more of a lifestyle thing, but like people, when they first join, like when you first join and you were 70 pounds overweight, losing 20 pounds wasn't very hard. Just like it's not very hard to raise your deadlift by 75 pounds in the first 3 months you're here. But like after that, like it's gonna be incremental, and it becomes even like it has to be a perfect day, it has to be a perfect week, it has to be a perfect month for you to hit that deadlift at this point.
Yeah, the wind's got to be right.
Yeah, it's like,
well, and that's like one of the things when we teach our courses too. We have like a couple LPs, like linear progressions, that we'll prescribe that are kind of based off loosely based off the Russian system for kettlebell sport lifting. I say loosely in a lot of things because as I said, we are like the counterculture to the counterculture. There are like, the strong, and I have a lot of people that are like, I've been associated with everybody, and I have gotten along, air quotes, at a certain point in some way or another. But like the strong fit people are like, what is that kettlebell lifting? They do sport lifting. That's what it is. But then the sport community looks at us, they're like, what is that? They don't do it because we have a hybrid style of lifting that we do because it's meant to complement these factors of what we're really trying to do and take into the fact that it could be accessory based or it's implementing into something else to help out. So we would teach seminars, and for the most part, most of these athletes aren't in like something like the conjugate system or working with a good strength coach where their posterior chains and their hamstrings are pretty weak. So we would implement in like one of our LPs. I'm like, hey, for the majority of your people, this is like a supercharge. It only gets to happen once, but if you go through this progression, you're usually going to see like 20 to 50 pounds increase on your deadlift because
100%. Because I had a good base for strength and some pretty decent numbers when I really got involved with, the West Side conjugate methods about 5-6 years ago when me and Gus crossed paths. Hamstring work was something I had done it, but it was never at the focus like it is with most of our program. And I immediately, my lift switch, like I was like stalled for so long, shot up. I was essentially went from being what I thought was a novice to, advanced to becoming a beginner. And I saw that great advances and it was like wild. And then when we started, I don't know if you guys do this, I really test everything on me. And then, then we deal it out. And then there was like, now all of a sudden, because like, we'll see the injuries. If I have an injury, I start to see it creeping into our programming because it's something that I'm doing too much or not doing enough of. You start to see it creeping in. Also with your successes. If I start to make gains in somewhere, I see in the programming, it's going to happen there too. When we did that, we saw, like you said, AJ, that's a funny thing too. You said in our little chat about like, you had to buy bigger shorts, right? It was like, everybody's like, you start to feel like your hamstrings in your butt and stuff. Like, you're like, oh my God, I have them, right? It's like, it's crazy with that stuff.
And that was one of the things that, not that I need to be sold anymore, but those first 4 months that I was training with Zach down here, I'd already been training for 3-4 years at that point.
And you had some good coaches.
Yeah. And I saw like 10-15 pound jumps on all of my lifts, like including like the strict press, like crazy. So that was another thing that was like, wow, they're really doing something different. And that's just like above and beyond the training that I've had before.
Isn't that the fun part, is like trying to find different ways to get that jump out of people? Like you said, strict press, it kind of reminded me. We were really stalled out in the bench press around here. And I mean, bench press is my love. And we did a heavy, like a good 90-day block focusing on the strict press and actually bringing it below the chin, where I normally, you know, like even Gus would tell you, they say there's a little gain in here, but I found by bringing it down, we actually shot everybody's bench press up in that block without even bench pressing. That's the part I love about this, is now that we've been in it long enough, you have to find different ways to spark those numbers to keep people interested.
And a big thing for us too is sometimes, you know, like we're not necessarily chasing like achieving, for us, especially because like there's so much periodization, like we've done so many cycles and so many blocks and climbed the mountaintop to get to certain lifts. And it's like, okay, well, how can I get back to my old lift or within 5 pounds of my lift and hit my all-time max without having to have a 6-week block of periodization to get there? If I can do that, then I'm maintaining more of a residual strength. And that residual strength is like one of the things I'm always chasing for my people. Because if someone is in an environment where they can't train with the proper equipment and things along those lines, which is like, even like, we'll make it simple. Like everybody went through lockdown, you know, everybody all of a sudden was like limited on their equipment. So it's like, how can I maintain and keep what I'm doing? A lot of people like, I got out of shape. Dude, I got in some of the best shape of my life.
Yeah, it was freaky actually.
During lockdown.
Yeah,
And it's not like you're like, oh, but you're eating super clean and stuff. Because I wasn't.
No.
AJ was living with
You're pissed about that. I wasn't.
Yeah, my fiance all of a sudden decided she was gonna like get in. She didn't never. She's not Betty Homake, nothing. She's a lawyer.
She's a very like
yeah,
hardcore, amazing lawyer.
like a powerful one. Like I punched way out of my weight class. But so all of a sudden she's gonna start baking, and then all of a sudden she became a bartender. So we'd be like trying to work, and then she'd be like, "Oh, it's 3 o'clock," and she put a cocktail down. I'm like, "All right, we're gonna need to get up earlier to work out because apparently 3 o'clock is when everything shuts down nowadays." But you're like at home, so I mean, who
at a point, I feel like after about 6 weeks, we were like, "Hey, Jess, like eventually we're gonna go back to work, and we still have to be fitness professionals. Like you kind of gotta cut it out with the baking,
there's so many
because there's no one to give cake to. Like it's just the 3 of us."
I think COVID proved like what you said earlier about Orange Theories and 45s of the world, was like we in our gym coming off of the barbells, going to lockdown, going on to what we call the Garage Gym Live, which is me talking like this, but doing workouts with people. Everybody started getting shredded. We were just doing push-ups and pistol squats and like fucking every
so many jumping
I could
lunges
ever. And then it started to be like, oh, those gains really came to it. Like it really helped for probably 6-8 weeks. And then they really came to a screeching halt where I was like, man, we are not getting better at all. And it was like, we got to get more equipment into people's hands. We got to mess with tempo a little bit more, because like that little newbie, you know, is like, kind of went back to where you started when I was, you know, in high school doing bodyweight stuff all the time to back to that. And we had a big jump in it. It's pretty funny.
Well, for us, it was like, and even when I ran like CrossFit kettlebell, we based our entire program off the premise of a guy can have 2 53-pound bells, or a girl can have 2 35-pound bells, and, you know, be badass, you know, like you can get a rocking training program where you still can't see, like, so here's the thing that drives me fucking crazy. All right. People always say like, you can't get strong with kettlebells. There's this like weird stigma online that you can't get strong with kettlebells. Now, the other thing that drives me crazy is that you have people that have years and years and years and years of periodization lifting under their belt that jump on the kettlebell thing. They're like, look how big and strong I got. I'm like, bitch, no, you have been benching. And that's why your chest looks like that. It wasn't from doing kettlebell snatches. Like, let's be real here. All right. Like you just got into them and now your Instagram's fire. Cool. But like people say you can't get strong. You can totally get strong with them. It's the same concept that you see with Westside, especially like conjugate tactical, that it comes down to the positions and doing things correctly. So part of the thing that was some of our people when we were during lockdown that got super shredded, and I wholeheartedly believe this, is so one, we tried to do the thing that a lot of people did where it was like the live class. We had zero fucking success in the live class. Now we lost, I think, 2 members during lockdown. We had a great community that stuck with us. But we would film a workout and we would do it. And then we would post it up and people would just do it whenever they wanted, but they could do it with us. So we talked to the camera and stuff. But what I think a lot of people did was they maybe were adhering to better range of motion and giving themselves a little bit more breaks to be a little fresher, to hit better push-ups and things along those lines. but they took themselves out of the class atmosphere. Now, at a certain point, everyone's got to get back into that class atmosphere because you can feed off that energy, and everybody went crazy, being locked up. Kids and your dog, like, well, being locked up with my dogs is great for me, but
yeah, you and Jesse too, like you got to see each other more than Zach and Jess are just like marital bliss in their house, like it's so great, we never get to see each other during the day.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, you look the same during the day. Like, I didn't know what you looked like during the day. But yeah, it was a cool, I mean, it wasn't a cool time, but it was from a data collection standpoint, it was interesting to kind of see because everybody universally, there was like a screeching halt to a lot of stuff going on, and people that adapted. Ideally, I hope they came out of that with new things to implement into their program. And we actually kept almost like a lockdown-ish model in our classes when we came back for quite a bit of time as far as the programming, because people really enjoyed it. And then I was just like, hey, at a certain point, we got to start reintroducing load stimulus, guys. We got to get,
right.
Either you guys start grabbing the heavier bells over there, or I'm just gonna have to put a barbell on your back to get you to blank. Because they're like, well, I'm rocking it out, and maybe today I'm going to use the 70s and for some people, they're like, oh, double 70s is going to be heavy. But for some are people that got used to them and they know how to use the style. Okay, now you're only at 140 pounds of loading. It's independent loading. It's odd, yes, but if I even just put 185 pounds on your back for a squat, it's going to change your body. So it's kind of just, always rotating stuff around, just like what we see with like the conjugate method and whatnot. So it's very cool how to do it. And like when I started catching up with Gus online, like I talk shit on Instagram and stuff, but like a lot. I still I just started re-jumping my Instagram again today. I was like, all right, I'm getting back into it. But I found Gus online. So like that was like a total big thing for me. I found him. I saw the way he was implementing conjugate tactical. It seemed it was much more in line with conjugate. But there was a lot of like similar veins of what we were doing. And I was like, I'm very much into learning. And I was just like, okay, we got to go there. So they did their first open course outside of Chesterton, which I have been there too, partied in his house. But they did one down in Texas. And I was like, hey, AJ, we're going to go to this thing down in Texas. And the whole time we were sitting there, she kept like nudging me. And it was cool to hear somebody else kind of recite something that I've been teaching for a longer time. But he had gone so far down the rabbit hole that it was like someone re-explaining what I was doing to myself. So it was pretty cool. And it's interesting the groups that kind of produce out of this. Now we know we're hearing how you're running like garage gym and stuff like that. And it's been a pretty dope experience of like how we got here, being that kid that took a very long gap year from high school.
Well, I think it like for both Zach and I, like, for both of us at some point in our 20s, we sat down and like tried to read about conjugate.
Yeah, the book of methods.
And just got overwhelmed.
Back into that.
So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
see that
right?
face?
Like,
it's a lot to read.
It's a lot. And you're like, I feel stupid that I can't figure this out, but really
I didn't feel stupid because I'm not good at math. math is like, I've gotten good at math.
bar math.
Yeah, I call it bar math and construction math. And I had to teach her construction math because she'd be like, and 3/16. I'm like, say like an 8 short. Like, say 3 short. Like, just 3 lines short. Don't tell me all these other numbers. It's confusing.
But like Gus make like the conjugate tactical makes conjugate so approachable. And then really like I was elbowing Zach because I realized like, oh, we are already putting into place so many of these guidelines and philosophies. I've just never heard someone like explain them the way that Gus is doing. And then we came back. I think the biggest thing that we implemented was like a lot more wide stance stuff.
Yes,
that I think that was the biggest change. Because Zach and I,
bro, did your numbers go down hard at first?
Oh man,
texted Gus. I was like, this is
it was definitely one step back to go 2 steps forward. It was, and I that's the line I use constantly down there. I mean, it's the conjugate system, I guess, in like the most basic way is like a optimal state of readiness at all times, right? Is to try to achieve that. And yeah, by doing that with the back, AJ, curious, like with your, we went up to Gus's lift. When I opened this gym with my background, I thought it was all these SWAT guys and like football players in here. And what I have is like 90% like women. My gym is 90% women. We go up to the pull through and we go 30 deep to Gus's event and bring, I think it was like 24 of those 30 were women. Like Is that I love, does that, like, for my wife, I wish you guys would love to meet her actually, but for my wife, that's a huge win. For us, it's a huge win. Just like we stuck to it when everybody wanted to do HIIT classes and that kind of stuff. We stuck to it, and now we have women competing in this. What does that mean to you? And how did you come to like love the barbell so much, or the kettlebell, I should say? That's redhead step job.
So
Oh, dude,
I
it took a while for her to love the kettlebell.
oh man. So I did martial arts when I was like little, and then I danced for like 10 or 12 years, kind of through middle high school and some of college. My mom she's a very early adopter. She's been doing CrossFit since like 2006 or something like that. So she would constantly come home and like be telling me all about her workouts. And I was just like, yeah, mom, whatever. I tried one class when I was in high school. It was Fight Gone Bad. And I was like, dude, my mom like doubled my score and did everything as prescribed. And I had like, the little 22-pound training bar, and I was big struggles. But there was one coach there on that like bring a friend day who had danced in the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. And so that kind of like caught my eye, like, okay, well, there are, there's not many, but there are dancers doing CrossFit. You've met me, I'm 5'9", when we're competing, I walk at like 180 if I'm Olympic lifting very heavy. So I was not built to dance.
Yeah, we were big when we competed in CrossFit.
Big, we're big gymnastics. So when I started the summer after my freshman year of college, or my first year of university, as we would say in Canada, I started CrossFit and I just fell in love with it. It was a little bit competitive. Like I started at about 3 months in, I started beating my mom in workouts, and I was like, okay, we got to keep this up. And then I started competing, and then I started coaching. And I really loved the heavy lifts, like more than anything. I didn't have good conditioning. I was not a well-rounded athlete. I had never gone to like quote unquote Globo gym and started on machines like you guys were saying, or even really like played around with dumbbells or anything. So I had some crazy imbalances, like, didn't know how to do a proper bicep curl until I was like 25. Just like unreal, but like could snatch 175, you know what I mean? Like just like such a weird dichotomy. So to me, being strong, like physically strong, helped me so much, like emotionally. And then coming down to pipe hitters and seeing all the women at Zach's gym and being like, oh, wow, like I'm the strongest girl at my gym, but I'm nothing. I'm like down, maybe not even making top 10 at Zach's gym. Like that's where I need to be. Like, just like if you're the smartest person in the room, find a different room. Like if you're the strongest person in the room, you also need to find a different room. Mm-hmm. And so ironically, I did come down here and PR all my lifts and stuff, but then, after the summer of sadness, we'll call it, Zach was like, yo, you're going to start jujitsu. Well, start again. I did it when I was 8, but you're going to start jujitsu again. And, you're going to start kettlebell training. I started with a like traditional 10-minute set. So you accumulate as many reps as possible in whatever your given lift is, in 10 minutes with one hand switch. And then after that,
and if you set the bell down,
you're done.
That's it. In kettlebell sport, you can't set the bell down.
There's no
setting it.
There's no breaks, which makes a regular.
It doesn't like if you set it down, it doesn't mean like
you still get a score.
So quick overview for anybody listening. So kettlebell sport is like, it's based off 3 lifts. There's the jerk, snatch, and then the long cycle. Long cycle is technically like a clean and jerk. Well, not technically, that's what it is. Then you can combine snatch and jerk into what's called the biathlon. So those will be combined sports, kind of like what you see in Olympic total. And the traditional is based off 10-minute sets. The first ones are more traditional to like what we really specialize in, which is called marathon, where there was no time limit. It used to be called the horse sport because the guys were just like crazy endurance, and they would just go pretty much until somebody just had to drop the bells. There was all these old time stories about guys going for hours and hours lifting kettlebells. So they like everything in sport, to quantify markers, you have to like get it into a certain parameter.
There has to be
So they took it to the 10-minute time domain. And it itself as a sport is I would say it's very fringe, but
it's very boring to watch.
But in like you go to Russia, and it's very recognized. But in the States, there was a time that it was getting big, but not so much anymore. Because it's boring. It's boring to watch. It's like who goes and watches their friend? It's only 10 minutes, but who watches their friend do a marathon? You don't. You show up at the beginning.
You go to one checkpoint.
And
Then you
go
go to the end. You go to the end. It's
Yeah.
like the last, if anybody goes to watch kettlebell sport,
It's
go
like
to the
the
last
last
30
30
seconds. And that's when shit gets exciting, because that's when everybody starts cheering and shit. Otherwise, it's literally watching the same thing that should be perfect the entire time.
It's like watching paint dry.
So what she references as the summer of sadness was we had a summer where like a lot of hardship came into all of our lives, like personally and stuff, and it all just hit at once. And I was trying to steer the ship at the gym, and AJ was having a hard go, and I was just like, took her in the office, and I was like, hey, listen, and I do this a lot. My version of tough love is like, hey, I'm gonna pet you on the ground at a certain point, and then I'm not gonna let you do. I'm gonna stand you back up, and I'll pet your shoulder still, but we're
But
gonna
you
get
can't lie down anymore.
yeah, you can't lie down anymore. And I like threw a gi at her, and I'm like, I'm gonna start teaching you jujitsu. And then the second thing I was like, and you're gonna start doing kettlebell sport, and you're gonna become an endurance athlete. And to tell like a strength athlete that you're gonna become an endurance athlete,
I was already crying, and I was like,
she's like,
I
I
don't think I could do it.
don't want to do it. But like for me, like I'm a very much explosive based athlete. Jokingly like make my wrestling career was very reminiscent of like Mike Tyson. Like it was matches were very, very quick, very, very violent.
But if they lasted more than 30 seconds,
if it got past 2 rounds, Nick, my brother's like, just keep stalling, because I'd be so gassed, because I had no idea how to train myself in those parameters. And even when I went into initial, when you get into like training back in the day, you know how it was like you'd run and you do weights. That was pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
And before I found the idea of West Side, where I found CrossFit, or started looking at Jim Jones. I worked at a personal training studio, which actually, when in retrospect, they had an idea. It was implemented incorrectly because they were working with like very much in the bodybuilding community, but there were these 30-minute sessions that they pretty much sold. And I was like one of the highest demand people they had. And it was kind of a complementary base of like Paula Quinn tempo style stuff.
Yeah.
And the thought process of Dorian Yates with the max, like the one max set. So they were like, you just do 4 or 5 lifts, and it was all machine based. But man, it would like the set would be like 3 to 4 minutes, and it would be the complete exhaustion. So I had a really good idea of how to get like a very good mind muscle control out of things. And that's like when AJ was talking about, she didn't know how to do a bicep curl. You get these athletes that get into air quotes again, functional movements. And a lot of them don't know that accessory work is super important to know how to actually control your body correctly.
And certainly like, in 2011 at my CrossFit gym in Canada, there's no concept.
No, absolutely. We just actually finished leading into Christmas. We did a 6 months bodybuilding block, 6 months, because I found as a whole in our place, people did not have I think a lot of our lifts were failing. Our big 3 were failing because they just didn't have the strength in the upper back. In particular, we said we had a lot of women here, so like upper body strength is typically, speaking in generalities, is usually a weakness. So we worked on that, and then there was the connection. It was like, people are already, I can't feel it, and it's like, because tempo is a great solution to a lot of those issues, I find.
It sounds super dramatic whenever I say it out loud. So when one of the CrossFit, like the first and only time that I was actually, well, I guess I'd competed individually before that, and I competed in some strongman events after that individually, but the only regional event that I competed at individually, and then I started going team, because at that individual event I actually broke my back. It sounds super dramatic when I say it,
but that's what happened.
but it's what happened. I have like no meniscus in my right knee, and sometimes it'll sweep, and it was like a heavy clean workout, and short and heavy was my jam. And I was like, I'm going to fucking go out and try and win this thing.
Murder everybody.
And I was like ripping on these cleans, and my knee swept in. And when it swept in, I like cued my body, and it caused a spondy fracture in my spine. And when that happened, like all of a sudden, like lights went out in Georgia. Everything was like, I actually finished the workout.
You're so stupid.
Yeah. And if you're going to be stupid, you better be tough, so I like limped off the floor. But once I got back to a state where my back was okay, I was like, okay, I got to like rod iron around my back. And the answer for that for me was box squats and an insane amount of tempo Bulgarian split squats. So I always usually, because I have a long sporting life, find a way to break myself. And then I find a way to fix myself. And then in that process, I take that and reapply it into our program. I'm like, okay, when I needed to fix myself, I did this. What happened when I was fixing myself? Oh, I got stronger, I got more jacked, and I got fitter. Who doesn't want those things? Oh, what did I do? I just changed something up. And tempo was one of the bigger ones to do. Now, at the same time, tempo can be over abused. Like you do want to like create load stimulus as well. But a lot of the times, even like when we're box squatting, I'll have people, I'm like, hey man, do it like tempo so they're not, falling on the box and shit like that.
Yeah.
People in their weak ass hamstrings, even if they think they're strong with their hamstrings because they train here, it always can be better. Everything can always be better. You know how that is.
For sure. AJ, I think you hit on something huge that really talked about what you said earlier, Zach, was like when you said, why did you start in the gym? And this hopefully with so many women that come to our gym, they understand this. Your mom, right? And Zach, you hit on lineage. Like, I think like that is such like that is something that's happening huge. And I hope that the women that are coming to this gym, because they'll be my age, which is older than you, but then their kids will be a little bit younger. So like, I think they're going to start to see and hopefully hear those same kinds of things like come about so that, we're done with this. Like, let's just like nothing wrong with dancing, but let's you're a woman, you're going to go dance, or you're a young girl, you're going to go dance. You're not going to like get into this wrestling stuff. So you're creating that lineage. You guys are creating that at 206 with all these young boys and girls, right? Like a lot of the boys too are being pushed just towards video games and stuff too, right? So like,
for real. Yeah, for me, I'm so lucky. And actually my mom did everything she could to not put me in dance and gymnastics. She pulled me out of ballet and put me in martial arts when I was 5. And I actually was the one who like pushed to go back to dance. But yeah, as a family, it was always very important to stay physically active. And I grew up in Squamish, BC. So if you guys know, like we call ourselves the outdoor recreation capital of Canada. So we're always like
it's a huge sign with a mountain
yeah,
bike
there's a huge sign. They're always like
last stop before Whistler.
Yeah. Zach's like, oh yeah, the McDonald's we drove by. I'm like, God, why I gotta say it like that? But rock climbing and skiing and just grew up in this very like idyllic childhood that really like cemented the base for like there always needs to be something physical going on in your life. And for me, I think that's the coolest thing to have started CrossFit and being in like the gym space as a teenager. And then now having all these like teen girls and even younger, honestly, starting to really embrace lifting heavy and, really like fully, like we tell our kids all the time, like, hey, whatever sport you're in, we don't care if you play sports, but if you do, awesome. But whatever sport you're in, your coach is never going to come to you and be like, hey, you're too strong.
Yeah.
Like that's never going to happen. So, if you're we tell the kids all the time, like if you're in season, you don't need to be here twice a week or even once a week, like focus on your sport, but we're always going to be here once your season's over and we'll just go back to work. And I think the coolest thing, kind of the first class we had of girls graduated in 2021. And we had like 4 or 5 of them that were like kind of consistent, it was really like they had the worst end of it. Like they got let go from school, like one day in March when they were in grade 11. And then they never really went back to school until college or university, right? Like because of the lockdown, like they really struggled. And so, we had a really like core group of girls. And now the cool thing is that they're coming back into the gym after finishing their second year of university and just, they're always checking in. If something's wrong, they call me or text me, like to have to be that mentor, like Zach was saying, to other girls, to other kids, but like the girls, especially to me is just like the most important part of my job that I take so seriously. Cause I know there were people there for me when I was a kid and needed that.
Absolutely. Leadership is influence. And you guys are definitely, I watch your videos now that we're all friends on Instagram and it is awesome to see. It is truly awesome to see the nonprofit. Like that's in itself got to be a challenge, right? That would be a whole other podcast, but what you guys are doing for the youth in your communities. And like, I cannot wait to come up and see it. Speaking of going up, we're going to Columbus next weekend. One of my coaches is taking the course So I'm pumped
Oh,
to
yeah.
head up there. So it's only a 3-hour drive from here, so it's real short.
You're
Short
gonna
trip.
see me and AJ are both gonna be there.
Are you
and
coming? Yes.
And
Right.
special guest is also going to, and this might be a good segue to talk about this guy, but special guest is also going to be there. Jeff Martone is going to be in attendance.
Oh, cool.
You guys, you don't know who Jeff is. That's okay.
like our surrogate dad.
Yeah.
Yes,
Jeff
I heard
was-
lots about him, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
So Jeff was, he's like, we call him like founding father of American kettlebell, which a lot of people be like, what about Pavel Svetsili? I'm saying, oh, it's an American kettlebell. All right. So,
Yeah.
but he was originally tied in with like the founding of the RKC back in the day. And he started something called Tactical Athlete. And that was kind of where I earned my spot with him on the seminar scene. But he left the RKC and got tied in with CrossFit and Greg Glassman, because he's one of the people that influenced me really into like constantly be seeking knowledge. Because in the beginning, when I was seeking knowledge, it's just because like I'm like, there's so much shit I don't know. I just need to learn it. And where do I learn it? You know, it was like back in the day, like I'll look it up on a blog, or maybe I'll find a YouTube video, or I'm gonna have to fly to Arizona to learn a course. So I would do that. But then I got to a point where, oh, maybe I know enough. You never know enough. You should always be learning. And Jeff taught me that. So he was going to these he went to like one of the original CrossFit courses just to see what it was. And he's like, oh yeah, they're kind of doing what I'm doing at the gym with the guys. You know, we got some rings over here and some kettlebells over here and a barbell here. That's cool. And they're like, oh, so you know how to teach kettlebells. And by factor, he ended up becoming their subject matter expert for kettlebells and going around the world teaching other coaches how to be proper coaches. And then the idea with that was coaching kettlebells, especially into the CrossFit space, into the functional area of things. And I met Jeff at one of his kettlebell courses. And then at the end of it, I thought he fucking hated me for one. I was like, this dude fucking hates me.
He really doesn't give a lot away.
Yeah, I know he doesn't. And it was just me I was a shitty 20-some-year-old, just, eating a bunch of shit in the back of the room. And like everybody else went out to lunch together. I'm like, oh, I'm staying here with this dog. Just a dirtbag. Like we're classic dirt. Like our gym, that like we actually have shirts that says like dirtbag and proud. We're like total dirtbags.
We dress like we work at a skate shop.
Exactly. It's like Carhartts and shit. Like you don't come in, and I'm not knocking on anyone else that doesn't like wear like in the summer I'll start wearing my board shorts and stuff again. But like I just roll in like with what I wear, and people are used to it. But Jeff told me about his Tactical Athlete course, which was like a week. So I went out there. It was in Georgia, I believe, and it was a pretty cool experience. Hearing his content from one course dealing in kind of the CrossFit space, and then talking about dealing in the tactical community. And at the end of it, that was when he mentioned Russia to me at the time, that he was going to be going back to do that. And then two, he was just like, well, does anybody have any, like, somebody asked, like, where do I get programming from? And he's like, well, I don't really do programming. I don't have it out there. And I was actually at the course with this girl. And it's funny, every time you hear me say I'm at a course with a girl, not to sound like that guy, but it's usually a different person that I'm talking about. So I was at this course with this girl, she started kicking me under the table because I had a training blog that I had started posting, just because like you did that back in the day so people could find content. They're like, tell him. And I was like, no, don't fucking shit. Don't embarrass.
Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. And it was like, I know one. I was like, son of a bitch. So
Bless her though.
yeah. Jeff wrote it down. Jeff looked at the stuff. And then he had a course in Idaho, which I think there was like 30 participants at. And he emailed me and he was like, hey, I need a second. Can you come out and help at it? And while we're out there, let's talk about some more of the programming stuff, because he would never do like a true programming block. I nailed it as far as helping out at it. I had a very short honeymoon phase compared to some people. I had a very short honeymoon phase. It was a couple of years maybe of traveling with Jeff, and then he just violently kicked me out of the nest. Like, and what I mean by that was like, he's like, now you're teaching courses, now you go do it on your own. And I think my first solo course was at her gym, where her coach then started having me program for her. And I think I had like, I don't know, it was like 20 or 30 people. Like Nate.
I actually knew about that course though. I should have gone, like, if only I knew. Go.
Be full circle.
Zach was like, he was back in, he tried to look older. So he had this like really big, like beard, like Thor. And I just remember like all the Americans would come to like Olympic lifting meets and like CrossFit competitions. And they're always like, USA. And we're just like, who are these douchebags?
We
Like,
were so rowdy.
yeah.
So
And then
rowdy.
now here I am.
Here you are with a
Going
guy
to
drinking a
gym with
purple
that
drink.
dude.
What is that anyway?
Oh, it's a blended acai or blended dragon fruit refresher. I'm getting over a cold a little
It
bit right
helps-
now.
Oh, yeah, here we
It's
go.
helping our immune system.
Like I would be drinking coffee right now, but I'm like, this doesn't sound good. But yeah, so Jeff kicked me out of the nest, and then I started traveling actually the world, teaching courses, which was pretty cool. Like I never thought my blue collar ass, like one of our gyms that we were building out, literally I was sanding the wall because we were finishing this
Door frame.
door frame. I was sanding it, and I was like, I gotta go. And I covered in drywall dust, left, got on a plane to Germany. Like somebody was sitting next to me, and I'm like covered in drywall dust. Because I was so used to like flying international. And I flew out on Friday and flew back on a Sunday. And that was like my life for a while, that I was doing these
Wow.
crazy back trips. And I think it's like I stopped counting at 100 courses that we've taught. I think I've been in like nine or 10 countries.
More than that.
Yeah, teaching different things. Super cool. It's really helped me. One of the things that I'm really good at, so there's like 3 phases of learning. This is what I learned from Jeff. I kind of got into myself when I was talking about Jeff, but Jeff, and the only place you can actually really see me and Jeff anymore together is at Power Monkey Camp. So it's kind of a big deal when we get together because people love watching us because we kind of have like our
The
act.
Zach and Jeff show.
Yeah,
It's
like,
amazing. Which you're gonna see him for is gonna be
I'm
great.
looking
I'm
forward
like-
to it.
Yeah, I'm professional and like very on, like when I teach, I'm a lot different than when I, am kicking
Not
it.
teach.
But Jeff like just gets off topic and I'm like, dude, and Jeff, what do you want to teach? And he's like, I don't know. I was like, yes, you do. You know exactly what you're
We've-
supposed to teach,
We're
right?
doing the same 2-hour block 7 times.
We've done this like so many times. So he's hilarious. So we get our act going when we do that. So that's only at Power Monkey Camp where people can really see us. But you'll get that full show. You'll get that full show up there. in Ohio.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Good. I'm looking forward to my guy who learning from it, man. He's a 22-year-old beast, so he's a young
Oh,
kid.
good.
Yeah.
Good.
Who I
But
first
yeah,
day,
so-
first
go
day
for
this
it.
kid worked for me. He shows up with a picture, and it's him. He's 5, and I'm in my SWAT gear, and I've got my hand like on his shoulder. I didn't know my wife had hired him. He didn't say a word, and he
Oh
came
my
in. And this
God.
first day of work, he's like, "Hey, my mom told me to show you this because his dad had worked with me, and they came to a show and tell day, and it was like, how hilarious is that? Now this kid's got like a 600-pound deadlift, and
Oh my gosh.
eager to learn. So when I told him
You
he's
gotta,
going to
you
the
gotta
course,
frame
he
that
like
and put it in the
he
gym.
explode. He was like, when you give somebody, you're like, hey, you want to go on this course? And he's like, yes. Like, all right, let's go next weekend.
Dude, it's like the kids we work with, they'll be like, hey, coach, have you heard of Ice Cube? And I'm like, what? Have you heard of Nirvana? I'm like, yeah, like I know it's coming back around for you guys, but I was your age when that shit was coming
my
out. So
gosh.
just shut up. It's just shut up. They just drive
Hilarious.
me crazy. But what I was saying, so teaching the courses international was like a big changing. So when we were, jawing it up and kind of talking strengths in Vegas, I said one of my things is progressions. Because a lot of the times I'd get stuck with interpreters when I'd be overseas, and there's sometimes there's not an interpretation for movement, so or vernacular, but I'd be like, well, how do you say this? And they're like, and they'd say it in English.
Yeah,
back.
right.
Nobody knows what it means now. All right, sweet. So I got really good at applying into. So Jeff taught the 3 phases of learning, or 3 different types of learning. So visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And it was really just trying to have a better visual progression for everybody so they could pick things up, because the auditory wasn't going to really work if I couldn't communicate to them. And I was being graded on every criteria of what I was teaching. And so if I was in, freaking, Switzerland, and someone had flown up from somewhere like Italy, which is like actually really close there. But they still flew over. They're like, well, I wasted my time coming here because they couldn't communicate. Now, Switzerland's not the big problem with this communication. Thinking more probably like when I'd be teaching in China and Korea and places like
Right.
that. So it was a very, very good learning experience for me, like very sink or swim. A lot of late nights for me, early mornings for AJ getting messages from me. I'm like, can you send this? Because I'm about to start something.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'm like,
just
I'm
so
birthing-
much stress.
I'm 14 hours ahead right now.
Yeah. I'd be like, why are you texting me? It's 3 a.m. there. He's like, Can't sleep,
Can't sleep.
need to program. I'm like, oh geez,
So-
great. And so for me, honestly, like as a new coach, I had almost the opposite experience when Zach's talking about learning styles. I was very lucky to work with a visually impaired athlete in like my first year of coaching. And so you can't just say like, and then you're going to do this, because she's getting nothing out of the class if that's all you're doing. So you really have to choose your words carefully about communicating what you want to happen, because she was freaking awesome. She's a massage therapist. She would do box jumps. She would run around the block. Like, she had enough vision that she felt comfortable doing almost every movement, but not enough vision that I could just stand in front of her and be like, okay, and then you're going to do this. So it was really interesting. And I think for me, working with adaptive athletes has been the most like positive effect on my coaching, to be able to be like, okay, really reformatting, like this is what effective communication looks like in effective coaching.
There's so much like that goes into that. You're right. We have a few adaptive athletes that are actually, we're doing a thing in 2 weeks here, which is a deadlift competition for the adaptive athletes. And we're like,
rad.
we cannot wait for it's like, honestly, it's the best event. We do a lot of events. It's the best one of the year for me, because we put the spotlights on and they get to, we got some nice warm-ups and all these things. They get to come out and just like show off all their hard work. But it is, and they have a bunch of the cops I used to work with volunteer their time with it, and just the little things that you learn from watching them coach these athletes is different, right? Like even like the hand placement, a lot of like very much touch, put the hands there, and then watching like the athlete just crush it, and the communication is like very, getting down to the level, and it's just very like eye to eye and showing. It's very cool to watch, and I cannot wait to watch these guys crush their lifts in 2 weeks here. Well, we're gonna pack this house. We're turning the whole gym into a bar. We got beer and wine, and like it's gonna be a killer event.
Amazing. So, yeah, I think Zach has given me a lot of confidence in terms of coaching progressions and stuff. I went with one of our coaches, went to like Carl Paoli course.
Oh yeah.
Maybe like 2018 or something like that. And he was like, who can teach an air squat like who knows this like the back of your hand? And I put my hand up like so confidently, and he had us do a progression of like teaching without using your words, teaching with your eyes closed, and then teaching with your eyes closed and without using any words. And I remember he came up to me afterwards and he was like, thank you for doing that drill. Like, you did a really good job. And he's like, the thing that stuck out to me is that when you went to touch your athlete, when your eyes were closed, you made sure to ask for consent to touch him before you started. And I was like, well, yeah, like I'm
Canadian. Of course I'm polite.
I'm Canadian. Of course I'm polite. I work with kids, and I was a kid in the gym, but like how all those layers like really makes you think about how you're interacting with people. And so I was just like, oh yeah. And he's like, well, that's not obvious to everyone. So I'm really glad that you did that. But yeah, I would say it's like same with Zach. I've only taught seminars in the US. I haven't been lucky enough to travel internationally yet, but I really like, I think
we're getting back on the international road. Getting back.
Nice. There is such an art to all of the coaching, and it's funny how your life experience really plays into that art. Like I swear that the best thing policing did for me was teach me to go into different homes of every nationality, every language, much like you, just local, right? And try to solve complex problems with major, sometimes complete language barriers, sometimes, like people who have way bigger problems than I could ever understand, and trying to go in there and solve those things. And then being able to like now and learning, and even being sent on courses about how to teach, how to put together PowerPoints and how to, make sure that, what this doesn't work and that doesn't work for adult learning. That was always like things I didn't appreciate then, right? You probably didn't really appreciate like, or even notice like that's what coaches were doing for you. And then now you're able to apply it later down the road. And I mean, life experience is huge. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on the show, like not the show, like your show, being on the visiting end of it and just being out in the stands. I've been lockdown got me out of that conjugate system, or not the conjugate system, but out of that community for a couple of years. So
man. Yeah.
Looking forward. I need a good refresher. That's what I said to my guy. I can't wait to get up there and just like get some, top up information and the new information. Cause Gus and you guys, like nothing nothing, you never teach the same course twice, which is
No.
another thing I love about that guy, and the network of people that we're now, affiliated with, which is awesome. So man, I can't wait to see you guys next weekend. I really appreciate you coming on the show. How do people look you up though? Right, I mentioned the 60,000 followers. I didn't mention where to follow you at though.
So our Instagram, you can find us at rxactual. As far as my personal one, it's oldcountrystrong@gmail.com. You can also follow our gym at 206.south. That's its IG handle. We have like so many.
I know. I was gonna say you guys have the most I've ever had on the show, so keep going. We'll list them in the notes.
Well, AJ's got hers.
AJ, what's yours?
And then my Instagram handle is at Adrianna Cara. And if you want to get in touch with the gym, it's info@206south.org.
And we field all questions, and we'll actually usually, we try not to like burn the candle in the middle and both ends, which we usually end up doing. But like people usually listen to us on podcasts and they want to reach out about nonprofit stuff. So if we actually usually will do a FaceTime or something like that with people to
if they're interested,
answer their questions. First, we're like, well, here's the downside. Really weigh that, and then
yes, and then here let's.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah, it's not all shits and gigs, but we had a teen class last night to like cap it off, and we were telling our kids like, yeah, we're kind of being honest, like, hey, we're a little sick, we've been a little run down, but just teaching you guys is like absolutely the highlight of our week, and we just really, really want to thank you guys for all the effort that you put in, and we try and like tell them how grateful we are for their presence, because it is truly fulfilling, even though it's the hardest work I've ever done.
Yeah, man. So if anybody has like questions on nonprofit, kettlebells, want to book us for a course, seminar, we specialize in everything that we do. We usually customize them to groups outside of our traditional instructor one, which is certified. But just DM me, really. It's the easiest way. Slide in my DMs.
Yeah, I'm gonna slide in your DM. This is international travel for you, technically. So
yeah,
we'll get you down. We're definitely gonna get you down to this area for a course. Or maybe we'll come to you. I should come to you. It'd be much more fun for me.
We're gonna do.
Well, you gotta bring your wife if you.
Yes.
If you
yeah. I don't think she'll let me go at that coast without her.
We're starting the construction on our outdoor structure next week, so I'm gonna wait and be like, hey man, we got like once the full facility.
Yeah.
Our new facility is actually like 3 buildings. It's almost like the length of half
It's
the
like
city block. Yeah,
it's like a compound.
yeah. So once that's all squared away, otherwise you're gonna come in and things are in shambles. You're like, oh, this room looks nice. What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fuck
Man,
out
I got back on the mats last night for the first time, and guess what? We do like it's like MMA, but it's catch wrestling based.
I was
No,
gonna
that's-
say, did I see that you
Hell
did
yeah.
science?
Zach-
Oh man, it was
so into catch
fucking-
wrestling.
it was the guy that I trained with, the guy I used to work with. He's awesome, like a trainer. It's not I'm the student. I like that part of it too, being the student. But man, it's Nelson week. Oh my god, all I had was first day back because my knee. So this has been my first day back, and it was like having somebody lay on my head and twist my neck for like 2 hours. I woke up this morning like, no workout today, just Guinness and Irish whiskey, loosen me up. So
well, yeah, we actually do I do a catch base. My other brother is purely jujitsu, but he likes rolling with me as a training partner for that. And then I've even gotten away from saying catch base because so many people are so purist in catch and what they think that is. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to take myself out of this.
Zach
group.
does dirty wrestling.
Yeah,
Jiu-jitsu.
it's like dirty boxing, but wrestling, jujitsu style. It's like, that's pretty much. But would Gus say he was a professional roughhouser? I'm going to take that title too.
Yeah.
go for it. I want to witness this one.
Yeah. So Jamie, our head jujitsu coach, like we teach like leg locks to white belts.
Oh
like,
yeah, we're very much against the establishment. On how to do
Yes.
this.
we just go in full force. So
Boxing is sparring without headgear. It sounds a lot more violent than it really is. It actually takes down the amount of like hard punches.
Yeah,
people
yeah,
hit
yeah,
each other's
yeah.
heads. But people come in, you're sparring without headgear, and then the leg locks.
people aren't even wrapping their hands. People
White
are like,
belts,
what
yeah.
is going on here?
Then the kids are lifting sandbags, and we're doing conjugate when they thought they were coming to a CrossFit affiliate. Everything's all fun.
Yeah. The kids are like, I do CrossFit. We're like, oh, honey, don't
Yeah.
walk into another gym instead.
Okay.
Unreal. All right. On that note, everything's different. You guys are awesome. I appreciate it.
Now's the time to do more and be more.